Were you listening to the lists in the first reading? There is nothing new under the sun. These fundamental sins are still there under somewhat more spectacular forms in our day, but essentially they're variations on a theme. Because when we were being formed years ago in theology, in moral theology especially, and therefore prepared for confessions, there were things there in the Latin books we were still using which weren't even imagined. They'd been written in the 50s, and now we have smartphones. We have the whole realm of the cybersphere, in which most respectable people, believe you me, are engaged in different forms of the same. And when it enters into marriage, it's deadly. You have here virtual infidelity. A husband who has vowed before the altar fidelity and all that goes with it is unfaithful by looking at other people on a screen, and now even more in contact with them if you're not careful. I won't elaborate. I'll leave it to your imagination. It's a quagmire which now we have to handle in confession, which wasn't even thought about 50 years ago. And by the way, it's so widespread that it's creeping into places it shouldn't be at all even dreamt of. And there, it's really demonic. If the devil wants to get a vocation to flounder, he can use this, and he does. I'll go therefore into the alternative, this peaceful list. How do we score on that? Now, there are things that we can cultivate without having to do great physical penance or have excuses not to do. We can all be patient, peaceful, gentle, kind, and exercise self-control. An immature person is one who is not in self-control. That person is a victim of his own reactions and passions. There are people who are just unable to filter what comes to their mind. They say the first thought that comes into their mind and react accordingly. They have never grown up. In psychology, one distinguishes between types of soul or spirit. Remember, psychology means the study of the soul, psyche. And the experts tell you that tendentially there are two types, with all kinds of minglings of the two in between. Those who are primary, those who have little or no control over their reactions, and those that are more reflective and are able to filter. A person, by the way, who talks a lot tends to be in the first group. And so, before we live our life, it's worth halting and asking, where am I at? The quality of my day, is it peaceful? Am I a source of healing by my gentleness? Or am I a heavy weight to bear? Do I react? Do I cause pain and not even feel it? It's tragic, actually, when it creeps into specifically the consecrated life, where precisely one is there to love. And hatred, or not hatred so much as sharpness, sharp edges come in. Never handled. We walk over the person next to us as over a carpet. That person is always there, and I can do what I want therewith. It happens in marriage, as we know. Never go to sleep without making peace. As St. Paul says, do not let the sun go down over your anger. But in this gospel, we have another dimension. He's warning us here, the Saviour himself, not to be orientated towards... Now, here we have the concept of mammon. This Palestinian notion of almost a god. And there are people out there who live for this god. In fact, if one looks at the comedy of life, one observes this kind of scenario not infrequently. Because of the social status of having a big home, a mansion, a big car, and so on, one will have two parents working, perhaps away from Dublin, where you can't afford a home of that nature, and having therefore the albatross of a great mortgage on their neck, with little quality of home life, having perhaps even to give their children in key years of formation to a creche or whatever, and make sure they can pay. That they can pay and serve this god Mammon, through which they can have a social status, as though their status mattered more than the quality of their life and their interior peace. For if one sacrifices one's peace for the sake of satisfying Mammon, one is in a serious mess. People ask, how much does that job pay before they get it? There are many who opt for a simpler job, a closer job, a less demanding job with regard to the taxing of the brain and the time, who don't have a massive house, who don't have a massive car, but are happy at home and have their children in the key years while they grow. And they are relaxed so that the whole life doesn't suffer from stress and worry, and even the work coming home with them. There are people who go on holiday and still, through the smartphone, have to catch up on the email. And some of that might be professional email. So they brought their job with them. And it happens too at home. Is it worth it, my friends? It happens too in the monastic life. Groups that take on all kinds of things and lose their community life and even their contemplative life. Too thinly spread. And the Lord goes on to indicate that there is another secret as well that we need to master. It's to cancel this illness of worry, anxiety. Because what's happening there is that we're living twice over the moment. We're living the next moment as long as we can anticipate it and obvert any disaster in it by living it in the present moment. And through life, we're doing that non-stop, so that we're never resting on the present moment, but always anticipating the next. And we don't live the grace of the moment. I remember years ago when studying in Aberystwyth, I was living for the first and third year with the Carmelites, with a house there, and my confessor was a Welsh-speaking priest there, and so he was helping me for those 3 years. But we had a very good prior in the first year, and he'd give us great homilies. And one day he came out with this, he'd speak quite slowly. I've got something to share with you this morning. I have the 10 commandments of a Buddhist monk to read to you. Pay attention. And on he went, and he got to one and he went like this: Thou shalt not worry, for in so doing thou shalt undergo the same disaster twice over. One great warrior got to the end of his life and said, all the worrying I did in my life didn't do me an awful lot of good. Most of the things I worried about never happened anyway. And where do we stand? Worry is in direct proportion to the things that we take on board. Therefore, complication of life leads to more of it. There are many who have a hobby which is so invasive that their life is sacrificed to it. A big one now is sport, but it's not the only one. Freedom gives peace and also joy. Absence of unwanted stress, unneeded stress, gives liberty of heart and mind. to be able to just breathe the moment as it passes and rest upon it. Thank you, Lord, for one moment of time. People I've known are no longer here. I still have a day. Praise God, I have time. I will not blotch it. God is bigger than my worry. He's had a few aeons of experience of running the universe. I've been here only a few decades, and I behave as though I were God. The world will not go on unless I worry about it. And of course I have theoretically the faith that God can handle it, but I must just do a little bit of worrying just in case he can't quite handle it. I heard about some miracles that happen regularly in a very Catholic part of Europe, that I know slightly. It's the south of Italy, Naples. As it happens, we had sisters that I used to give their retreat for every month who were from that area, who were up in Tuscany. Good nuns, young nuns. And one year they asked me to go down to their place for their annual miracle in the chapel. It was the liquefaction of an early church martyr, St. Patricia. Any Patricias here, by the way? Remember that you have an early church martyr patron saint who does things. Well, every day, or rather every year, on her martyrdom day, this early martyr does the same as San Gennaro Arius, and the blood liquefies. Same time, same channel, it always happens. Although if the other one, by the way, doesn't happen, they're worried. But there's another one, and I quote it because it shows how much heaven cares. There is another place down there where for years and years and years a very curious miracle happens. There is a statue of the Madonna, and it's a statue that doesn't behave normally. Our Lady cares for the poor down there. Do you know what she does? She goes round and helps them when they have no other help. They invoke her, but she never lets them down. As a result, a very strange phenomenon happens. All the time, the soles of her little shoes are being eaten up at the statue, being worn down because of her getting around. You don't believe me, do you? Well, the bishop does, and every year, because these soles are worn down until there's nothing left, he has to, before all the people, replace the shoes of the Madonna with new shoes. And the other shoes go round those who want help from heaven, and miracles happen wherever they go. Now, my friends, that tells you something which the people of the streets understand far better than the people at the screens and in the driving seats of our bureaucracy, who know it all. The simple people will tell you, I cried and she came. They believe, and their faith is honoured. And it happens constantly for those who genuinely have nothing else. The Lord cares. Near our abbey, quite often I'd be sent to Seggiano. One of the 3 churches operating there was built because of the same kind of thing that happened. There was nothing to eat at all. The woman had sent her husband to get some work, to get something, spare us. And he came back with nothing. And she had no way to survive. She only had one hope, the Madonna. And she came. And she opened the chest, and it was full of meal. And they built the temple of the Carità to remember it. And further down, Montalcino itself, she came again. And often I'd be sent there. What happened there? The city of Our Lady, Montalcino, was under her protection and under siege. Help! And she came and defended it miraculously. And they built the sanctuary to thank God and Our Lady for the miracle. The little people. Heaven does care when we have nothing else. And what heaven wants is the childlike trust that says and believes when it's praying that it's being listened to. Some years ago, at Lourdes, there was a child on his brancard, ill, very ill, immobile, but he had one thing, he had faith. And as the bishop was coming with the Blessed Sacrament, blessing each brancard individually, he knew he was going to be healed because he believed it. And the bishop came and gave the Eucharistic blessing over him. But he was not healed. He put up his head as far as he could toward the monstrance and said to the Lord, "Okay, if it's like that, I'm going to tell your mother about it," and asked to be taken to the grotto. And the Mother of God took pity on his tears, and he was healed. The children have more faith than we do, my friends. We are safe by our worrying.